So we are here today to talk about the intersection education and technological innovation in Africa. And so Africa Day commemorates the foundation of the Organization of African Unity on the 25th of May, 1963, which is the organization that we now all know today as the African Union. So Africa Day is a great opportunity to assess where Africa is as a continent and where we would like to go, and the key trends and collaborative opportunities available to make this happen. One of these key opportunities is the role of education, technology, and entrepreneurship in the youngest continent on Earth. In today's Impact and Innovation Forum, we are taking a look at how these three sectors intersect and the ways in which the diaspora is and can contribute to innovation on the continent via collaboration with educational institutions that are driving entrepreneurial and technological growth. And I think it's really important to mention that this conversation that we're having here today is not happening in a vacuum. Some of you might know that this very week, President Ruto of Kenya has been visiting the United States, where he and his colleagues have signed into agreement or been part of conversations that will hopefully lead to great technological strides in Kenya and the continent. On Tuesday, President Ruto was at Spelman College, and quoting from the university's own website, during the visit, Spelman, the Kenyan government, and other historically Black college and university leaders signed an agreement to support new partnerships between universities and industry to drive innovation, research, and job growth in science, technology, engineering, and math, so the STEM-related fields in Kenya and globally. This is great news, and I, for one, am particularly excited about the ways in which the historical and contemporary African diasporas collaborating with Africans on the continent to exchange ideas on innovation and growth. And just yesterday, President Ruto's visit continued in Washington, D.C., where he and President Biden spoke together on the importance of the two countries working together, and in particular, how they are launching a new era of technological cooperation. And Ruto emphasized Kenya's young, talented, educated, and innovative population, and how Kenya is primed for exploring investment opportunities between the two countries. And then I also wanted to mention that actually ADN's founder, Almaz Nagash, is in DC this week for several reasons, but part of it was because of Ruto's visit as part of her role on the Presidential Advisory Council on African Diaspora Engagement. The EdTech initiative signed at Spelman was a recommendation that came from the council. So we applaud Almaz and the rest of the council on their work in getting that public-private partnership rolling. And then this type of work is actually perfectly aligned with ADN's own strategic plan that we launched earlier this year, which includes 4 priority areas, one of which is public-private partnership. Another priority area for us is entrepreneurship and social impact, which is why we wanted our conversation today to not just be about education and technology, but also about the entrepreneurs. They are the forefront of these innovations being able to enter the market and becoming a part of our daily lives. Otherwise, I feel like some of these innovations might end up just sitting in an ivory research lab somewhere. So thank goodness for entrepreneurs, I would say. And then I also just wanted to quickly mention that education is more than just about the academic institutions that train our students. Non-academic programs where you do not necessarily get a degree are very much still taught by experts, are also an important part of the educational landscape of both the US and Africa and around the world. And even here at ADN, we believe in the power of non-academic educational programs that train the next generation of leaders and entrepreneurs. We have 2 business accelerator programs, our Accelerating Black Leadership and Entrepreneurship program, and our Builders of Africa's Future program. And then also more recently, we are supporting on the legacy localization activity for the Young African Leadership Initiative, which has trained over 27,000 young people across Africa. And while all 3 programs themselves are not necessarily degree conferring programs, they do all have academic partners involved in their delivery or who house them. So all this is to say that cross-collaboration that is possible between different types of institutions are critical to offering robust and varied educational experiences for people around the world that all ultimately contribute to technological advancement and entrepreneurship. And that is exactly what we are here to explore further today. And so, without further ado, it is my immense pleasure to welcome our esteemed panelists who are all playing critical roles in contributing to trends across various institutions and initiatives. Together, we will explore the intersection of education, technology, and entrepreneurship, and better understand how we can get involved in the growth of Africa's future and the communities in which we, the diaspora, live. And so my first panelist is Stanley Mukasa. He is the Associate Director of Entrepreneurship at Carnegie Mellon University, Africa. Stanley has close to a decade of experience in the design and management of entrepreneurship development programs. Prior to joining CMU, Stanley was the program's lead for Entrepreneurship and Global Challenges program at the African Leadership University Student Ventures program at the ALU. My next panelist is Grant M. Warner, PhD. Grant is the Bank of America Endowed Professor of Entrepreneurship and the Director of the Center for Black Entrepreneurship, CBE, which is a collaboration among the Black Economic Alliance Foundation, Spelman College, and Morehouse College. The CBE aims to grow the pipeline of Black entrepreneurs and connect them to investment opportunities. And previously, Dr. Warner was at Howard University, where he was involved with the I-Corps program, which seeks to accelerate university commercialization of research. And finally, my third panelist is Paul Wilson Jr., founder and CEO of Wilson Strategy Agency, LLC. Paul Wilson Jr. is a visionary entrepreneurial executive with a distinguished career spanning nearly 2 decades, recognized for pioneering entrepreneurial leadership and driving organizational excellence. Paul recently performed the role of Vice President of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurs, a business generator established to assist Black entrepreneurs in Metro Atlanta. Paul also supports entrepreneurs in Uganda through the Global Entrepreneurship Week Uganda, which happened in November 2023. And then he's also been awarded a Mandela Washington Fellowship project that he'll be doing in Uganda as well, in collaboration with the Innovation Village. The full bios of my fantastic panelists are available on our website, but their LinkedIn profiles have already been shared in the chat. So please definitely connect with them because they are a wealth of knowledge. So gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Good to be here.
Fantastic. So we are going to just jump right into our first question, which is for all three of you. And how do collaborations between the diaspora and educational institutions, both in the US and in Africa, address technological disparities and bolster innovation? I'll let Stanley go first.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me and for such a great introduction. Well, I thought I would go for the second, but I'll give this one a try. So I think there are two things here that the question or the discussion aims to address when I think about what you are, when the question you've asked in terms of addressing, the disparities in the technology. So I see an opportunity for these kinds of collaborations between education institutions and the diaspora in the US and Africa to close the skills gap. We have a very huge skills gap on the continent, for example, in Africa, when it comes to, when it comes to research, when it comes to technology transfer, innovation, and commercialization. They are very well proven processes and, very proven processes and models that have been tested in the rest of the world that I think these kinds of collaboration bring forth on the continent, especially in Africa, where we are able to, work together with our counterparts that have managed these processes, that have managed to work on breakthrough innovations, learn their journeys, learn their experiences, and then be able to translate them down into Africa. When you see most of the challenges we have, we could solve them, for example, through research. But one of our biggest challenges is our research is not that deep to the extent that we are able to solve the challenges that we face with every day, and that makes us consumers. we have become consumers. Most of the Africans are consumers of technologies that they've not been part of, the development process. And that works in a way because it moves us away from, having that overhead of development cost and tech and skills that we don't have. But in a way, it disadvantages us and in a way it creates a gap in terms of it widens the gap between the creators of the technology and the users of the technology, looking at our growth potential as Africa with the youngest, population. If we are not working on becoming creators of these technologies, then there's a huge gap that would result into, the fact that the technology is not compatible with our challenges. So collaborations between education institutions and the diaspora, in the diaspora in Africa, I think will play a huge role or are playing a huge role in closing this gap within the innovation ecosystem, the research, and the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So that's what I can say for now, but I think there's potential, and this is something we should, push for to make sure that we close these gaps.
Yeah, I totally hear you on that, especially the skills gap that you mentioned at the beginning. Thank you, Grant.
Yeah, and I'll pick up on some of the themes that Stanley was touching on, particularly this idea of a skills gap. So in your introduction, you mentioned that I work on the I-Corps program along with my colleague who's here, Kiana Stewart. Part of the advantage that the U.S. has relative to the rest of the world has been some of the experimentation that's gone on around what are best practices for lab to market translation, commercialization, et cetera. So there's a whole infrastructure built here now that supports an academic innovator, someone who's at a university, and helps them translate things that they develop at the university in the labs, et cetera, all the way through the commercial pathway, right, up to initial investment. So we've worked with a number of different countries, not just Africa, but other countries where they're looking to replicate that same model. So we have done it in Africa. So the Innovate Egypt program is an example where we look at, well, how do we take the model that's been developed and refined in the U.S. and apply it to an African context, so that they understand, well, what are the elements that work, what are the elements that don't work, what are the lessons learned that have happened in the U.S., how can you avoid some of the stumbles? But the advantage of the program is the efficiency you get in resource utilization. Because I would say the skills gap certainly doesn't translate back to who has the best ideas, who has the best understanding of the problems. Sometimes the gap really is one of resources and being able to efficiently manage resources, again, where mechanisms and processes have been developed for that, or things that we want to push out into the diaspora, right? This is something that we can share as a tangible asset and skills transfer. So we've done quite a bit of work in how we take that I-Corps framework, talk about the support programs that the U.S. government has developed, and think about ways that could be translated to a local context.
Thank you so much. Yes, I learning best practice. Go ahead, Paul.
No, I was just really just to supplement what has already been said, and just to add a little bit more. I think one of the benefits of just collaborations in general, right, is to be able to leverage different strengths of different types of organizations, right? So we're talking about universities, or we're talking about incubators, accelerators, right? And then of course cross continent. I think there's just that the benefit of different organizations are going to bring different strengths to the table. Right. And so being able to leverage different strengths of different organizations and different types of resources, right? Because some organizations are getting government funding, others are getting it, from the private sector, others may be from investors. And so I think just being able to kind of have different organizations with their strengths tapping into different even funding resources, and you kind of get the best of all worlds, if you will, right, coming to the table. And I think the more collaboration, the better, especially if everyone's on the same page with similar goals. Maybe not the same goals, but definitely similar goals, moving in the right direction. There's just that benefit versus one entity, let's say in a silo, trying to solve all the problems, right? Which we know just never works, right? And is not efficient from that standpoint.
Yeah, and I think that's like the importance of those collaborations, right? Because everyone brings something different to the table. So we always hear like collaboration over competition, and I think what you said, Paul, about the way everyone brings something different to the table, like that is exactly the reason why we are able to allow that cross collaboration and why it's beneficial. So Stanley, you run the entrepreneurship program at CMU Africa. So what role should African educational institutions play in shaping a technology-driven curriculum that meets global standards?
Thank you for the questions. I think there's a huge opportunity that African education institutions have when it comes to shaping and developing curriculum that not only speaks to their immediate local environments, but one that speaks to the global landscape. I think when you look at the challenges we have in terms of the programs that are being developed on the continent, it's either they are not the graduates that are being produced are not getting enough jobs within the immediate private sectors, and those that would qualify for jobs, those that would qualify for jobs do not have the exposure, but as well as advanced skills that would qualify them to get opportunities within other global companies. So there's a potential here in terms of having programs that are designed to meet global standards in terms of bridging the gap between what academia is producing and what industry needs. So I think that's the immediate step we need to be taking as we're developing programs focused on technology. We also need to assess the tech trends that are shaping the global landscape and ensuring that we are meeting and speaking to those, because we need to have and create a generation of tech leaders that we're producing that can take on roles beyond their immediate local communities, but to as well compete globally. So I think that's one of the major roles that we should be playing as academic institutions that are developing a tech-driven curriculum, close the gap between industry and academia on a global landscape. That speaks to partnerships, of course, and in constant communication and listening to what the industry needs and making sure that we are responding to those needs. One other aspect that is very interesting here is to ensure that the curriculum not only prepares skills-ready graduates, but graduates that are able to also create their own opportunities. With this, I'm talking about economic opportunities through entrepreneurship, being able to, come up with ideas, tangible ideas that are tackling these grand challenges we are facing, for example, globally, with the use of the same tech skills that they have been able to acquire through their academic programs. It's more or less transferring the tech skill, applying it to a real business challenge, rather than applying it only, or with the focus of only applying it into an actual business. So having both options provided to our graduates, I think it's such an important role that African education institutions should be playing, or that are playing, in trying to shape the global standards, or meet the global standards of today. There's one interesting scenario that I've also seen where we are training our students to become problem solvers and critical thinkers, because we might not know all the problems that we are preparing them for, but giving them a mindset that allows them to tackle any challenge with very specific methodologies you've seen going on, like design thinking, for example. The principles remain the same, it's the application that differs. So within that, you're able now to have problem solvers that can develop innovative solutions that can translate into commercial entities, startups that can create jobs for themselves, but also employ others. So I look at it in that sense, not only doing, teaching and learning research to produce job-ready candidates, but also to create those that can become champions in creating economic opportunities for themselves and for others in Africa. So that's my take.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's a great take. I think especially because when you were first speaking, it was clear that in addition to the skills gap you had mentioned earlier, there is an opportunity gap. So I love that you then gave us solutions on how to close that opportunity gap, including getting people ready for the global job market and not just the local job market, but also getting people ready to like create the job market, right? So I think those are really great ways to close the opportunity gap as well as the skills gap, which I think educational institutions are already contributing to. Okay, so Grant, over to you. How do collaborations between US-based educational institutions support African tech and entrepreneurial innovation in localized and community-centered ways? And I know you have experience from beyond just Africa, like US to Africa. Your I-Corps program has also been modeled, like the model has been taken to other continents as well. So feel free to talk to those best practices as well.
Yeah. So, I'll provide maybe a little bit more context about I-Corps. Picking up on the last conversation, some of the points that Stanley made, kind of people creating their own opportunities is so important, right? So if you look at the U.S. Economy, most new jobs are created by small businesses and startups. Like, people are shocked to hear that, even though the U.S. is known for the Fortune 500 companies. It's the smaller entrepreneurial spirit that really drives job growth. And that's part of what has led to so much investment in entrepreneurship in the US. As I mentioned, kind of building out these entire ecosystems that make translation, for example, very easy. So the I-Corps program is, in one sense, a technology transfer program, right? The idea is that we want to get things out of lab into the market. So we don't produce posters and papers, but we produce products, right? And processes, things that help real people's lives. But in order to do that, what you really need to do is provide training to the graduate students, the undergraduate students. So, kind of, though it appears on the surface like this is a technology transfer program, it's really a training program that says, well, how can you be an innovator, right? How do you begin to identify opportunities, de-risk those opportunities, decide whether or not this is something that represents an economic opportunity? So that is the difference between the invention and the innovation, right? So when we think about the technology, well, that's the invention, but that's not everything, right? So, I mean, lots of technology in the US, in other Western countries, doesn't necessarily position them to come over and solve the problem, because the innovation piece is really about understanding the context, right? Understanding the people, understanding where the real need is. So when you think about kind of localized and community-centered ways, that is what drives the I-Corps program. You go out, you do customer discovery, you have some hypotheses about the nature of a problem, what the solution might look like. But before we go and push that out into the world, what we ask you to do is talk to a minimum of 100 people in that ecosystem, ideally predominantly the people you think will be end users and decision makers. And oftentimes what happens is that the idea that you came in with is not the idea that you leave with, right? Even if the core technology might be similar, the application, the packaging, where it needs to be integrated, all of that stuff becomes super important. So again, the core basis of the program is making sure that the people most proximate to the problem have a say in the solution, right? So people don't come in just because they think they have great technology and implement solutions that are not going to work, right? That we have the community as a partner, and ideally the community as a co-creator, if not the founder of the solutions that address those issues. So I think that's a really really important distinction for that program. So, for example, we ran the Innovate Egypt cohort. We don't come in and say, well, this is ICOR, here are the things that you have to do with respect to technology. It's driven by the local circumstance. So if we do a cohort, for example, in the US, it might have a very heavy weight towards life sciences because there's lots of investment in that area in the US. When we launched the cohort in Egypt, it had a very heavy focus on ag tech because what they're worried about is climate change. What they're worried about is water disparities. What they're worried about is circular economy and how they might recycle waste product and make it useful. And that was what the core of the cohort was about. And we don't dictate what the solutions are. What we do is make sure that you are consistent, intellectually honest, in chasing down the truth by engaging the community, right? You're a member of the community, but you don't represent the full voice. Let's make sure we get the full voice of the community. So the idea again is to train those entrepreneurs, but when we leave to have trained a cohort of instructors who are able to carry the program forward, and that's something that we've done successfully in Korea, where they've looked at the similar models in Europe. So again, it's not just Africa, but I think it is something that Africa should adopt because again, it's been battle tested, so to speak.
No, that makes so much sense, Grant. And I really like what you were saying around technology training versus technology transfer, because technology is not going to transfer easily from one place to the other, but kind of similar to what Stanley said in just teaching people how to solve problems, they can then take any technology and understand how to apply it to their localized context. So I think that's a really great approach. And like, no, of course, if you are introducing people to this technology, but also introducing them to how to think about the technology and then make it something different that actually works in their local context. So thank you for that example. Paul, over to you. Could you highlight the importance of entrepreneurial development programs for the diaspora, and if/how these contribute back to entrepreneurial and innovation initiatives back on the continent? So I really like the way that Rice is training Black entrepreneurs in the US, but I know that you also have a lot of connections on the continent as well. So really curious about those cross collaborations.
Absolutely. Interesting. Back in the day, and Grant and any other the educator can probably relate to this, right? There used to be this argument around, can entrepreneurship be taught or is it innate, right? Is it are you born with entrepreneurial skills or can you actually educate people in this space? And in the past, I think a lot of it was based on, hey, if you're maybe really smart people, or they just had this eureka moment, right, and they just came up with these great ideas. That's where we got all these great entrepreneurial inventions and innovations and things like that. I think fortunately, I think we've moved so far past that, but also to see that we can't allow entrepreneurial development to feel like it's random, right, or to feel like it's just for one sector or class, if you will, of society, that they have access to all these other resources, right? And then that drives all the innovation, and everybody else is just kind of left to do whatever, right? Or if there are this entrepreneurial energy and these other spaces, that there's nowhere for them to go, right, to really develop that. So fortunately, with programs, like Dr. Grant, and with Stanley and other universities and other incubators, like the Russell Center, right? Now it's okay. We've been able to a little bit democratize entrepreneurship, right? And democratize entrepreneurship education so that any idea or great ideas can come from anywhere now. But also, and we've already talked a little bit about this, that skill training is important too. How do you think like an entrepreneur, right? How do you go through the technical aspect, customer discovery and product development and market research, right? And all those critical things. And the more we can kind of place that type of mindset and those skill sets into the toolkit, if you will, of entrepreneurs. And I say whether it be African American entrepreneurs in the United States as well as entrepreneurs on the continent, I think we actually have some very similar challenges, right? When it comes to not just birthing great ideas, but now how do you take it through a process that can become commercialized and you can actually profit from it? And so it is even more critical these days than ever before, right? That we have structured programs that teach skills. It's interesting at the Russell Center. It's interesting. We deal with a lot of course, we're those who don't know, it's adult entrepreneurs. It's not students. So it's people who are in their second or third career. I think the average age at the Russell Center of the entrepreneurs was between 30 to 45 years old, right? So these are people who have been in a career. But here's the interesting thing about that. People have been, let's say, and they were very successful in their career, but we all know starting a business is different than working in a job. No matter how great you were in that job, to take that skill set and now let's build a business around that idea, my talent, right? My passion, if you will, is a completely different context. And so you still have people who are very talented, just still kind of winging it, right? Without the structure of a program, an organization, or an entity. And so when we think about, again, the development of entrepreneurs in the United States as well as on the continent, to me, these programs are critical when we think about, again, building the right mindset for entrepreneurship, adding the technical skills that are needed, the commercialization, right, process. And then from a resource standpoint, it takes money to start a business, right? It takes resources, it takes investment. And how do you position your business in a way that it's attractive, right, to investors, or it's attractive even to go get a bank loan, right, or whatever type of funding it is. All those components are critical. And unfortunately, I'm not sure, again, not as much experience, on the continent as definitely the United States. We got a lot of people who are just winging it, and that's the technical term. They're just figuring it out along the way without a lot of coaching, right? Without a lot of oversight and assistance. And so the more that we can bring people into structure, right? Which is interesting. It sounds contrary to an entrepreneur, right? To bring in structure, but you all understand that we need some structure to help those incredible entrepreneurial energy and ideas actually flourish from that standpoint. And so, yeah, so when we think about, again, some of the things I just mentioned, but also one last thing I'll say is I think also the mental and the emotional aspect of entrepreneurship that we actually don't talk much about, right? And even from an identity standpoint, if as a Black person, are there enough examples for me to see of successful Black entrepreneurs that I can see a reflection of myself, right, in their progress, their success? So I actually can feel confident that I can do this versus thinking that I'm kind of out here all alone, right? Or the odds are too high for me to do this. But the more we can get into, again, these ecosystems and these environments where we can reinforce not only the technical things, but the mental and the emotional aspect of this journey, it's going to be that much more beneficial, right? When we can see a reflection of ourselves in the instructors, right, in the advisors, right, in successful businesses, as well as others from that standpoint.
Yeah, thank you so much for that last point, Paul. I think that also speaks to the importance of like peer groups, and so the opportunity to learn as a group. And I know a lot of the different programs at your various institutions have people coming in cohorts where they get to interact with each other and learn from each other. Because the structured training that you mentioned is really important, regardless of what continent or where you are being trained from. But that cross learning from your fellow entrepreneurs and those that look like you or from similar background to you is really, really important for learning, right? There's a lot of different avenues to learn through. And so then this question is still for all of you. So whoever wants to answer first, who feels like particularly called to answer it, could you highlight some programs you offer at your various institutions that connect or solve entrepreneurial and or technological innovation needs in Africa? And how can the diaspora get involved in these projects? Yeah.
Already about the ICOR program. So that's one of the programs that we offer now. In truth, that generally has been facilitated by a relationship between our Department of State and the government in the country that we run the program. So for example, in Egypt, it's the equivalent of the National Science Foundation that helps to sponsor it in the country, help to recruit people to participate. Similarly, when we set up the programs in Korea, same thing, like the equivalent of the National Science Foundation helped to facilitate that relationship. With that said, so those programs, like the ones that are facilitated in that way, tend to be kind of much more robust. So you might go through a 2-month cohort experience, kind of learning the customer discovery process, and again, facilitated by some support kind of from your local ecosystem. We've also done kind of fly-in boot camps. So I did one in Senegal, for example, where we were there for a week. And again, kind of really immersive customer discovery experience, just shorter duration, not tied necessarily to lab to market translation. But again, those things tend to be kind of facilitated at a higher level. What we're hoping to do, so we've sent students in the past to the European Innovation Academy, as an example, where students come together, kind of share this innovation experience. And what we're trying to do now is target, moving forward, those similar experiences in the diaspora. So I was aware of one in the Caribbean, for example. We had some students that wanted to go to Jamaica to participate. And hopefully, maybe it comes out of the relationship with Kenya that you just mentioned. We're able to facilitate one of those types of dynamic experiences on the continent, where we bring together particularly students from different institutions from both across the U.S. and across Africa, really have them go through an innovation experience. So kind of develop a challenge, have them work together, et cetera. But that is more planned than on the ground. The stuff on the ground tends to be facilitated government to government.
Thank you. Just to add on what Brett has said, we run a similar model, but I'll speak to one specific program that is called the Tech Skills Marketplace program. It's a program we launched last year with the aim of bridging the tech skills gaps, this tech skills gap between SMEs and engineering students or tech students. We discovered that there's a very huge interest in SMEs, especially those that are working on tech-enabled solutions, to hire talent. However, they cannot afford. This talent, and they are also facing the challenge of wanting to develop highly competitive tech solutions. However, they don't have the know-how. So, as a university, being Carnegie Mellon University Africa, we are producing tech talent every year. Every year we graduate students. Our students always pursue competitive corporate opportunities because the startup opportunities are not very attractive, first in terms of pay and in terms of how they articulate the projects that the students will be working on. Many times, even those that have the opportunity to pay, they cannot clearly state the project in a way that would attract, for example, a master's IT or engineering student to take on, the opportunity they have. So we launched this program, called it the Tech Skills Marketplace program, that connects startups in Africa to tech talent. Initially, we started with CMU Africa students only. However, we've been able to grow the program to also support students from across the continent. Now we're supporting students and startups from South Africa, from Nigeria, from Kenya, from Egypt. We are, in Morocco already. We are going to Senegal. The vision is to reach a point where, one, we support students with developing an entrepreneurial mind. They are going in very early, at a point where these founders are also still figuring out what the team would look like. And as they are going in early, they get to discover what it actually means to, run a startup or start a startup. What is the typical journey of, an early stage tech startup? we've had a couple of students transition into full-time opportunities, because right now it starts as an internship where we co-fund 85% of the internship cost, and then the startup only co-funds 15%. It's an opportunity that I've seen Africans in the diaspora also taking advantage of. They're already participating in this program. So it's still open, and we invite all Africans living in the diaspora that have founded companies on the continent to participate and, take advantage of the tech talent we've produced, but as well as be able to work on very specific tech projects that they think they would need support with, especially if the skills gap or the skill challenge requires advanced tech skills that they would otherwise not be able to find on the labor market or even afford. So that's one program. We have other programs like, the business incubator programs, accelerator programs. We run annual innovation summits, which we are open to inviting some of the Africans living in the diaspora, those who are interested to participate in such programs. I can share with you the links here to those programs that I'm talking about. If you are interested, you always feel free to reach out. We can always share emails. Feel free to reach out to engage and see what's happening. So I think for me, what's interesting is that all these programs I'm talking about, at least the first one, we already have participation from founders that are African founders living in the diaspora. And that number is only growing every time we keep rolling out this program. So this is our second year running the program. And hopefully by the time we get to the third year, we'll be able to have a very big percentage, big representation of Africans living in the diaspora. So that's it that we are doing. In case you're interested, feel free to DM me and I can always share my contact.
Thank you so much, Stanley. That's really helpful to get better insight into the program. Paul?
Just briefly, the organization in Uganda, that again, it's called the Innovation Village. And so they are, so they have 4 locations across Uganda. So one is more of an office space, co-working space, and where they're developing tech entrepreneurs or professional services entrepreneurs. Another location that they have in another part of Kampala. So it's 2 in Kampala. That the first one I mentioned. The second one is actually a maker space. And so it has opportunities for textiles. So when we think of sewing machines and creating fabrics and clothing like that, they have ghost kitchens or cloud kitchens, I guess, depending on what terminology you want to use there, where different food entrepreneurs, right, can come in and use their services, as well as just other spaces for retail entrepreneurs with products to actually be able to sell out of. And then 2 of the other locations are in more of the rural parts of the country that may be supporting entrepreneurs, again, who are maybe in the agricultural space or ag tech space from that standpoint. And so they have an interesting model because, again, they're really serving entrepreneurs across all industries. Sometimes, we tend to focus on tech because, again, those are often fast growth businesses for the ones that make it. But we think about from a portfolio standpoint, right? Even most, successful venture capitalists, they may invest in 100 companies and they're looking for that one unicorn, right, to be the billion-dollar company. But one of the things that the way we talked about it at the Russell Center is if we only have 1 of 100 companies succeed, that's failure, right? It's like we can't really take the same unicorn model to say we can afford to have only 1 out of 100, Black-owned or African businesses succeed. That's almost failure, right? And so it's almost that we got to even change the context of how we evaluate success, right? And what does success look like in our communities? Yes, we want the unicorns, but we can't, reject all the other companies by chasing after just the unicorns, right? So the Innovation Village, I think, does a great job again of identifying, businesses across all specters and how do we support businesses in those different sectors and those different industries. you know what I mean, from that standpoint. And I know one of the other things that they're looking to do is actually expand their model across the continent by actually utilizing a resource that the United States has, which is called the Small Business Development Center, right? So if you're familiar with the SBDC and how that network works throughout the United States, they're looking to adopt a similar model as they begin to expand. So hopefully bringing, again, more entrepreneurship resources, consultative resources, advisement resources to entrepreneurs in the community. Again, even if they're not the high growth entrepreneurs, but those, again, who will be able to build and create jobs, right? That are going to impact their local communities from that standpoint.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. I love that idea of like, success for everyone. And it's like, we can't just focus the whole program on like 1 out of 100 unicorns. Like all 100 people who are in that program have the potential to create job and impact their communities. So they, deserve support, investment, funding, resources, opportunities as well. So thank you so much for that insight. I see a few hands coming up, so don't worry, audience. I have not forgotten about you. We will definitely have time for audience questions soon. I have one more question for our panelists before I hand it over to allow the audience to come in with their questions as well. And so one of the questions that I wanted to jump into for our panelists is that I kind of wanted to understand a bit, and I think, some of us in this room, the audience as well, they're interested in what are the benefits of being part of the educational programs we've heard about during this panel section and others like them, and what is the relevance to the average entrepreneurs and the communities that they serve, and what is their relevance to international development? And to actually answer this question, first of all, I'll pick from the panelists, but I wanted to invite a special guest who is here with us. She's a colleague of Dr. Warner's. And so Kiana, if you are still around, we'd love to hear a little bit from you about the benefits of the I-Corp program and other educational programs like it, and what those benefits are to the average entrepreneur.
I'm still here. I can quickly chime
Great.
in. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. So I'll say one of the benefits outside of the ones that Grant already highlight is really the community of mentors, right? So mentorship is super important, whether you're an academic entrepreneur or community-based entrepreneur, having mentors. So these are skilled, battle-tested, using the phrase that Grant used earlier, professionals, entrepreneurs who have been in the space and been in the field for years that are bringing multi-layered perspectives to help entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs or seasoned entrepreneurs, and putting, as we talked about earlier, community around entrepreneurship, because it can be extremely lonely. It can be, you're doing something that is going against the grain, right? Like we are taught to get higher education and to utilize that education to go into the workforce as producers, but entrepreneurship is really training, to the conversation earlier, folks to be able to build businesses that then welcome in outside resources. So I think one of the main benefits that I see, particularly from the various iterations of the National Science Foundation I-Corp program, and the one that I'm most proud to be a part of, is the mentorship capabilities and really having an access to a seasoned network of individuals that you can leverage for business development, or for customer discovery, or if you're looking at, mergers and acquisitions, as you get further and further down the line, you really can leverage the community to help you build and grow not only yourself as an individual, but also the business that you're developing.
I love about like the community that's built around the entrepreneurs, because otherwise it is a very lonely journey, especially before your first employee, right? Okay, Stanley and then Paul, what are the benefits of to the average entrepreneur of this program?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll again speak to the tech talent marketplace, some of the benefits it offers to our entrepreneurs and any other entrepreneur that would like to participate. I think the first one and the biggest one is the access to a Pan-African tech talent base. CMU Africa, we are a Pan-African university with 20 nationalities represented within our student population. So it's possible that your company would be based in Kenya, but hire a student from Rwanda or from Nigeria or from South Africa. That in itself is a huge benefit because it comes with a lot of understanding in terms of how different markets work, especially if you're getting talents from across these major hubs, entrepreneurial hubs from the continent. We do funding as well on two levels. One, as I said, we co-fund the hiring of this talent. We provide 85% of the funding required to hire this talent, which I think is a very big support or benefit because many times if this talent is to be hired without this financial support, in most cases it's very expensive. The tech talent is quite expensive. So that financial support, I think, is a huge benefit. And then we also support with capacity building and business advisory services. We've been in cases or situations where some of the founders we are supporting with this talent, for example, need legal support to draft to create a very strong agreements and contracts with the talent they're hiring. If they are still in the early stages of developing the solution itself, there's stuff to do with intellectual property, disclosure and non-disclosure agreements. How do you go about such? We in most cases provide for that. And then the other benefit is the convenings we do, the summits we do that bring together all the different entrepreneurs, investors in one room, and then the opportunity to pitch and raise more funds. I think it's such as well a big opportunity and benefit for everyone that participates within our programs. And lastly, just like my colleague said, the opportunity to grow this network or this community of like-minded individuals. Again, all our programs are Pan-African. We support or we design with the intention of supporting the continent rather than just a specific country. And one of the biggest challenges most early stage companies face is the lack of information and the lack of connections within the different African ecosystems, especially the big entrepreneurial hubs. If you do mention South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana, for example, Morocco. So we have established and created strong connections within these hubs that anyone that would participate in the program would easily get a gateway into our connections and our partners within these major cities on the continent. So those are the main benefits in brief. I can discuss more when we get more time. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I love that it's like Pan-African, but also the ability for localization with the hubs. So they all come together in Kigali, and then when they return to their different regions, they are able to plug into a hub and continue the connections that they've made while at CMU. So that's really brilliant. Paul, over to you, the benefits for students in your programs.
Sure. One of the things that I think is critical that we don't talk as much about is non-technology becoming tech-enabled, right? We talk about the tech companies, right? And that makes sense. They're developing their technology as a tech company. But I think also a critical opportunity for growth, right, is companies who aren't selling, let's say, a tech product, but allowing them to understand how to leverage technology to make their own business more efficient, more effective. One simple example is AI, right? That is dominating everything right now. So if our non-tech businesses are not using, let's say, AI to make their business more efficient, more effective, allow their processes to be more streamlined, right? They're missing out on opportunities that other businesses and other cultures, right, or other communities are leveraging. So I think that's one of the things that we, needs to also be on the forefront, and are embedded and need to be embedded, I say more in programs, is how are we helping again, non-technical businesses become more tech-enabled, right, as they're operating, no matter what industry that they're in and no matter what their product or service that they're selling.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, I like that idea. I think this is something that I've discussed with Stanley before. Like, it's not just tech businesses that need tech, right? And so being
Right,
able to
absolutely.
train non-tech entrepreneurs on how to use tech is really important. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so it is now time to pass it over to our audience. I see a few questions popping in already. So if you are camera shy, you can drop your questions in the chat. But if you're not camera shy, we do invite you to unmute and turn on your camera if you're able to, if your internet connection allows you to. And go ahead and ask our wonderful panelists any questions that you have, thoughts on the intersection of education, entrepreneurship, and technological innovation. I saw one hand up, Dr. Habimana. If you are still interested in asking a question, the floor is yours. I'll give you a couple of seconds to make yourself known.
Hey, good morning here.
Good
Yeah,
morning.
I am Dr. Blaise Habimana. I'm here in United States in Arizona. I'm a president and CEO of a nonprofit organization. We are operating in different areas. And among those areas, we're supporting immigrants worldwide, including our fellow Africans. And the support that we provide, we do support them to get integrated in their new communities and feel home. So we support them with education and technological area, and to the end of this, we are trying to collaborate with the universities and the higher learning institutions to equip these people, these immigrants, to get integrated in the new health systems and the technological innovations. Now, my concern is this: is there an area? Is there a network where we can get connected through this platform and share views, share ideas, and see what we can do together to lift up this education technology in African diaspora here in the United States of America and across the globe? So that will be something that can help us to uplift our innovations, our knowledge and skills, and help each other put our effort together to support our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. And one of our panelists has to go soon. So Dr. Warner, I know you have another engagement at Spelman. Seems like a very busy week at Spelman.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. No, well, it was a pleasure. I don't have a direct answer to the last question, but it was a pleasure to participate. Certainly looking for ways that the Center for Black Entrepreneurship can continue to support the broader diaspora. I remind people all the time, it's not called the Center for Spelman and Morehouse Entrepreneurship, not called the Center for HBCU Entrepreneurship, it's called the Center for Black Entrepreneurship. So really, really positioning to support the wider diaspora. So it's definitely been a pleasure to serve with my other panelists, and thank you, Kiana, for stepping up in my place. She'll be a much better panelist than I was anyway. So.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Take care.
All right,
And so
take care.
to speak to Dr. Habimana's question, I think he was asking around what are the opportunities for trust hub collaborations, because it sounds like he has a hub that he works with of entrepreneurs, and so curious to understand the opportunities for his hub to tap into the other hubs that we have been mentioning here on this call. So over to the panelists.
I'll jump in, and this is I can't speak on this specifically in terms of the access, but I'll tell you what the opportunity is coming, and hopefully there may be some connection opportunities. So up until now, the Russell Center has been more focused on Atlanta. However, over a year ago, they started investing a lot in data, the data infrastructure, right? Gathering data, understanding what are the factors, right, that allow actually Black entrepreneurs to grow and to succeed. And I know they have a definitely strong interest in sharing that information and that data as it's continuing to be being curated. So hopefully soon there will be some opportunities where, again, they begin to share that. The other thing is, because the emphasis had been on Atlanta-based entrepreneurs, everything was really localized. But later this year, my understanding is that they have, the work started before I left, but now they're expanding their online platform to allow those who are not in Atlanta to begin to access some of the resources and the content and the training that's being offered. So hopefully, let's say maybe by the end of this year, at least from a Russell Center perspective, there will be some opportunities to engage with their network, because currently there's a little over 500 entrepreneurs that they're engaging with. But again, they're just local to Atlanta, but I know ultimately they definitely want to expand beyond that. So hopefully that'll create more opportunities a little later this year to begin to plug in to what's happening there. But then also that goes both ways, right? You know, from that standpoint.
I wanted to just highlight academic institutions. So I'm currently at Howard University, but I have appointments at other universities as well. I'm an entrepreneur in residence at the University of Maryland. And so I'm thinking about a program that I ran when I was a mentor in residence at George Washington University that was specifically designed for community-based entrepreneurs. And so thinking about the question, ways that folks, entrepreneurs in communities across the United States can potentially learn about or partner with academic institutions that are looking for entrepreneurs that are doing innovative work or developing innovative technology and scientific contributions that might help support some of the work that's being done in academia as a way to sort of build connection and partnership and to bridge the gap between the gaps that exist in academic institutions for academic entrepreneurs and those in the research community and those who live in the communities that are, you know, surrounded by these academic institutions. So thinking about ways that perhaps you and your work in Arizona might partner with some of the institutions to build relationship and to understand what capacity building might look like as a mechanism for support in your work and in your community. So that's one thing that I was thinking about.
So Dr. Habimana, you know, please feel free to reach out. We have these opportunities open. And I think one of the reasons why, again, as I said, we create all these networks of hubs on the continent and, you know, great people that we engage with all over Africa is for us to be able to transfer these connections to other entrepreneurs that need them. Just reach out, let me know who you want to meet with, how you would want them to, you know, support. And I have, you know, I have people that I would potentially connect you with. I see your hand is up again. I don't know if I'm answering the question or you want to add something, but it's open. Just feel free to reach out.
Dr. Habimana, if you don't mind entering your comment in the chat, and so then that way we can open up the Q&A to other people so that they can ask questions as well. But I did want to do a shameless plug that the ADN does have our two entrepreneurship programs, the Accelerating Black Leadership and Entrepreneurship Program and the Builders of Africa's Future Program. And so for us, we run graduations for our entrepreneurs. And so whenever we do graduation, we do invite the community to come to graduation. It's typically either virtual or hybrid. And so that's one way to plug into these communities is by joining the events and activities that they have. You are all invited to ABLE and BAF graduations in advance. And then, of course, we always invite people to participate in our programs in other ways, even if they're not entrepreneurs looking to be trained by us. They can be mentors, reviewers, feedback partners. So I'm sure all of your programs are also, you mentioned mentorship pools as well, Kiana, in your programs. And so there are different ways to plug into these hubs and communities, even if you yourself are not looking to get trained by that educational institution. Abdi Shakir Tarak, can you go ahead and...
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Sorry, my name is Abdi Shakur. I'm a senior lecturer at Nottingham Trent University, United Kingdom. I'm very much interested, really, when it comes to entrepreneurship in Africa. What are the most common sector that this entrepreneurship is actually engaged? Is it the IT? Is it service providers or any other sector? I'm really keen because of my growing interest in agripreneurship or agribusiness type, which I think a continent like Africa is very, very important because when I was involved in agri-business sector in early 2000 or late 1990s, is the amount of post-harvesting wasting that exists within the agriculture sector was really huge. And I think whether there is any scope for the new entrepreneurs can actually engage and make huge difference in that aspect. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. I'll let Stanley take that since you're on the continent. Let us know what people are doing.
Thank you very much, Tara, for the question. I think, Africa is more, in terms of interest in technology, is more open to a variety of technologies, but I will speak to a few that are taking up. Fintech, for example, is such a huge one. We have issues with payments, cross-border payments. So fintech has really picked up. Edutech as well. We need very many innovators within the education space. It's one of the things we are talking about here. So any innovation within the edutech space right now is very attractive. Agritech, yes, we have this huge challenge of feeding the growing population of the continent. So the application of technology within that is also such a huge opportunity. Logistics and supply chain, management technologies are also picking up again because of the transportation challenges we have across different countries on the continent. It's such a huge opportunity. Which other one? Internet of Things. So you can go on. But science, cybersecurity is also another major field that has picked up. Again, because we are all moving online, we are moving all these transactions onto the web. So, the security has become such a very important sector to innovate around. So I can mention those, and I don't know if that helps, but great to connect with you. Yeah, I'll let my colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stanley.
Yeah, I really agree with that list, Stanley. I think another one I might add is health tech. I see a lot of people trying to plug the gaps in the healthcare system on the continent. Kiana, I saw you nodding throughout, so I don't know if you had anything else to add to the list as well.
Yeah, I was definitely going to add health, and then I was thinking about climate and energy as two others in addition to health.
Exactly. So just like the solutions that are plaguing the continent, there's a lot of entrepreneurs basically solving it, right? So definitely agree with that assessment. Paul, I don't know if you had anything else to add. I saw you share the link to the Innovation Village Uganda in the chats. So I know you're quite plugged into the ecosystem there.
Yes, and really, I don't have any other additional programs. I think they hit the main ones. Another organization I'll just add into, at Makerere University. They have a entrepreneurship and innovation center, so I had a chance to interact and engage with them. So that may just be another resource, again, as we're thinking about other organizations who are doing this work.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you so much for your question. Elaine Randria, over to you. Question or plugging your hub?
Question. Sorry to interrupt. I didn't expect you to give me right away the chance to speak. But my question is actually directed to you, which is, I think, will not benefit to everyone here, because I feel that this organization or what you are doing is very much ahead. So my question will be like repeating things that that people already know. So I was just wondering, how do I get in touch with you so that I can ask my question? Yeah.
Of course, of course. So you can always contact ADN at info@the africandiasporanetwork.org. And we're also accessible on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And I know that our panelists, their LinkedIns were all shared at the beginning of the call. So we can share all our panelists' LinkedIn again, and I will also share ADN's LinkedIn as well. And I'll share mine. Nikita, yes, Nikita, over to you.
Yeah, I thought I would just tap in. Thank you. Someone sent me an email, an invitation to attend, and I was like, oh, look. My name's Nikita Shielroll. I'm from the Bahamas. I founder and CEO of an organization here called Young Marine Explorers and the Cat Island Conservation Institute. We spent the past 16 years really working on building capacity for ocean science and conservation, climate action in the region. And as of recent, so actually first time I'm publicly talking about this, but we've just established, because of all the challenges that we experience when you're from small islands and you don't have access to the resources and same thing goes for everywhere in Africa. And I've been working in East Africa predominantly for the past 2 years now, sort of connecting with communities and developing these large scale climate solutions. But we've just established a new organization in Florida called PlanetWorks. And so I'm CEO of that. And the whole idea is like, how do we strategically mobilize action through technology and community and research? Because having operated just in the education space, I can't, it's cute, but you can't do much unless you actually have real product, and you need money to do that. And so we've just launched YME. We have another climate solution called Ocean Love Coffee. So all sales, we just had our first sale of like both green coffee from the ships from Mombasa in June, and then online sales begin being roasted out of Brooklyn and New York in the fall. But again, just so the idea of like generating new financial flows that then get invested into the communities that really need it. So I'm here to learn, here to share, here to partner. Thank you again for the invite, and hi.
Hi. I don't know if I heard a specific question there, but if we heard one, Kiana, what was you? Because I was like, this sounds right up Kiana's alley with the whole like research to market.
Yes.
Question.
So thank you for sharing these insights. There are a couple of synergies. One, I'm Jamaican, so I just wanted to say that. Two, I am a new member of a lab in the atmospheric sciences department out of the College of Arts and Sciences at Howard University. And so I'd love to just connect with you to learn more about your work and think through ways that perhaps we can partner through the work that we're doing in atmospheric sciences. And then also akin to that, my colleague Grant Warner mentioned the National Science Foundation program. So there are tons of sort of spin-off programs that are not necessarily specific to academic entrepreneurs, like graduate students or faculty that are on or in academic institutions, but still utilize support structures through the I-Corps program that might be beneficial and helpful to you. So I'm very happy to talk with you offline to one, learn more about you and your work, but then two, to see if there's some way that we can get you plugged in to the I-Corps network.
Oh, I love that. This is my favorite part of ADN events. Like just those like, oh, like I'm Jamaican. I'm also working in earth sciences. Like, let's collaborate. I love that. So thank you both so much, Nikita and Kiana, for that demonstration, live demonstration, unplanned of connections and the collaborations that are possible when we all gather for events like this. So thank you both so much.
And I have a quick question.
Yes, Paul.
Nikita, did you say you're doing work in the Caribbean?
Yes.
So are you familiar with the organization called Islandpreneur?
No.
Led by Ife Badejo. She is on St. Martin. But her goal is to build more, again, entrepreneurial networks and systems and support for entrepreneurs in that region. So it's called Islandpreneur. And I know they're doing some great work, you know, kind of in that region.
Super. I will check them out. Thank you.
No problem.
And then what part of Florida are you in? Just
Sure. Melbourne.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All the connections. Great. Thank you all so much. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to say a big thank you to our panelists once again, Stanley, Kiana, Paul, Grant. Thank you so much for your insights, your expertise, taking the time to, you know, really explain all these different initiatives to us. I think sometimes what academic institutions are up to is kind of like mystifying for people. So I think the opportunity to demystify it and see how it has real world impact for entrepreneurs and the people impacted by entrepreneurs was really insightful for myself and everyone else on this call too, I am sure. Thank you so much to our audience for taking the time to be here today. I don't know what the weather is like where you are, but I'm sure it's a lovely afternoon, hopefully, and you could have been anywhere else, but you are here with us today. So thank you so much for making the time. Thank you for being here.
And thank you, Omalayo, and for the speakers' amazing conversation. Thank you for joining us. I know it was a tight schedule. It was the last minute for some of you, and you know, some are just my heroes. Kiana just jumping in last minute and saying, hey, I'm here, use me. So thank you for doing that for us. We really appreciate it. I want all of you to know that the African Diaspora Network is committed to continuing to host educational series like these, webinars, events, and also informational resources will be shared throughout our community. I just want everyone to be aware of our upcoming events. We will be hosting an event at the United Nations this year. That's going to be in September. We're going to put that information out. We also have our annual event, which we will be hosting in DC of next year, I'm sorry. That date has not been finalized, but it will be in DC in 2025. But we will be sending that information out. Please do make sure that you subscribe because we do partner to host other events as well. So to each of you that have joined us in hoping to collaborate, definitely reach out to us in our partnership pages. If you have my email, which I think a lot of you do, feel free to email me so that we can schedule time to talk about future partnerships, collaborations, educational opportunities. We look forward to working with you throughout this year and into next year. So once again, thank you for joining us. Everyone have a great afternoon, and we hope to see you at our next event.